Hi, Tony here. Welcome to part 2 of the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 build. Apologies, it's taken a while to come through. I have been waiting on parts to arrive. I've got some that I can't fit because I'm waiting for other parts, but some key bits have arrived, so let's get on and get those fitted. Before I crack on with the video, I just want to thank people for their support. I had a lot of good comments and a lot of good ideas and some information on part 1, which you'll see some of that coming through into the project. There's some good stuff that I hadn't seen that people have put forward. On the flip side to that, it seems that there is a hardcore of Royal Enfield owners that have no time for anybody that wants to modify the bike in any way. And some of those were quite expressive in the way that they put their feelings across to me about what I'm doing with the bike. Now, of course, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, so if you are the sort of person that thinks that I'm ruining the bike or I bought the wrong bike if I'm having to do this with it, feel free to comment. Just know that I don't care. I bought this bike to modify it. I'm going to do what I want to it. I'm very much a believer of my bike, my rules. That applies to everybody out there. If you don't like it, don't watch. Anyway, let's crack on with this job, and I'm going to be fitting a DNA air filter kit, and I'm going to be messing around with the side panels. This isn't a performance bike. It only puts out 47 horsepower. I'm not going to bother trying to massively boost the performance of the bike. If I can get it to run a little bit better, then that's all well and good. But I can't see the point of going down the big bores and power commanders and everything else. It's not a performance bike, and I'll probably get more from the bike by reducing weight and trying to get that bulk of the bike down a little bit, which will help in handling and everything else. But one thing I was going to look at was changing the air filter, removing the snorkel that's on the standard one. I'm going to leave the air box in the bike, I think. Certainly for this project, if I go on and take the bike further later on, then I may well do an airbox removal. But for me, for the time being, I'll leave it on there. But I do want to improve the breathing a little bit, and that's why I'm going to fit one of these DNA filters. Now, I will be open and honest and say that DNA did send this to me free of charge. But if you've watched my videos, you know that I'm not going to gush and say this is the best thing ever. It is an air filter. It will improve the breathing, and we'll touch on that as we go through. But this kit, with the filter and the bracket that removes the snorkel, retails £84. Now, as I said, I'm not trying to eke out loads of performance, but if I can get the bike breathing a little bit better and get the exhaust fumes coming out a little bit faster and a little bit easier, that's going to help things. The bike is going to go off and be properly dynoed and remapped. Not to squeeze more performance out of it necessarily, but just to make sure that the bike is running as well as it can do with that filter and exhaust change. But anyway, that's a future episode, so let's get the camera moved around and I'll show you just how quick and easy it is to fit this air filter, and then I'm going to do something a little bit different with the covers. So, in the box, you get the filter and the mounting plate, instructions for the service kit, easy to follow instructions for the fitment, and a few stickers. To remove the side panel, pop the seat off. You need then to undo this screw. Try not to drop the washer. That releases this lock, and then you've just got 2 poppers in rubber mounts that you can pop off and get that side cover away. Once that side cover is off, it exposes the standard snorkel. So it's 3 cross-headed screws. That exposes the standard air filter, which you can remove. So there is the standard filter, paper filter with a wire mesh over the outside. There's the DNA filter. You can see that mouth is slightly bigger, but this filter will breathe more, and it's simply a case of popping that back into place, and then it's just a case of simply screwing this back in with the 3 original screws and putting the side cover back on. And that's all that was allowing the air to go through into the airbox. So now we've got this completely open, and I'm going to try to enhance that a little bit by modifying the side panels, so that's the next job to do. It would be easy now just to spend some more money and buy a new set of custom side covers, but I thought, well, why don't I do what I've done on previous bikes? I'm going to take this, drill some holes in here, put some mesh behind that, repaint it, and voila, homemade custom side covers. From what I've been told, this next bit is going to annoy my American viewers, because apparently these side covers are in quite high demand over there, because Honda have already trademarked the Interceptor name. So the ones in North America or in the US, I'm not entirely sure, just say Int on there as opposed to Interceptor. So the fact that I'm about to remove this sticker and drill through this is probably going to annoy them, but these are easily accessible in the UK, they're not expensive, and if I want to ever replace them and go back to stock, that's an easy thing to do. The first thing I'll need to do to prepare this ABS piece is to remove the metal bracket at the bottom with 3 Torx T15 screws. Now ordinarily I'd look to remove this sticker here. It feels like it's been clear coated over the top, so just a heat gun probably wouldn't be enough to get that off. I would need to flat that gloss coat off, then remove that. But because there's a nice straight line on here with that arrow that's been fitted by the factory, I'm going to use that as my base for mapping out where I want to put the holes. So I've just got a standard hole cutter that goes into a drill. This is a 32mm or 1¼ inch. So I've just put a little bit of masking tape on the middle there. There's my line. I can do it by eye in terms of getting the center there. So that's where the center point needs to be. Before I drill it with this, I'm just going to use a narrower drill to give me a pilot hole, and then I should be able to keep that nice and straight. I'll swap that over for a slightly bigger one. Line up the pilot hole, hold that as steady as I can. We'll obviously need cleaning up and tidying up, but that's my starting point, and I can now decide whether I want to go with the same hole either side or just use a drill and do a smaller hole either side, which I think might look nicer. So having had a look at it on the bike, I've decided I'm going to go for a slightly smaller hole either side. This is the smallest hole cutter I've got, so I'm going to use a step drill, and I've just marked as far as I want to go in terms of diameter. So I know where that needs to be. I'll measure out from here to make my mark on that line, and then I'll drill a pilot hole again and then drill the hole through with this up to that point. So I'll put this cloth back on here. I'm not going to catch anything with this drill, just to help me hold that steady. You can just go through a stage at a time. Until we get to our marker. That's that hole done. And the next hole done. And I might just drill one smaller one either side of that as well. So that's the holes done. Now I've got to prep this. Now in terms of getting the rest of the sticker off, now I've drilled that, what I've found is I have been able to get a blade underneath that to get that started, and I can peel that off. Now that will obviously leave a ridge here because there is a clear coat over the top, but I'll have to flat this off anyway to be able to get rid of this shine and key it ready for painting. And I've got to neaten all of this up, so I've got a selection of files to be able to go through and do that. So I'll get the rest of the sticker off and then we'll get on with flattening it, and you can see how it goes from there. Time to flat this off now, and this is where I'm going to use some wet and dry sandpaper. I'm starting with 240 grit paper, not too aggressive. I don't want to put loads of scratches in the plastic. but it's enough that I can start to flatten this down. And I'm going to keep doing that until you lose this mark, so we can see there that we've gone down enough to get rid of that lip. And before I paint it, I'm simply going to take this bolt and the clip out so that that doesn't get mucky. But I'm going to carry on flattening this off with the 240. I'll probably then go down to a lower grade just to neaten it off, and then we can get some paint onto it. So once you've given this a good going over with the 240 grit, that's going to be enough for the primer. You don't need to go any finer than that. You just need to make sure that you can't feel any of the ridges on it, and you've got rid of everything that's shiny. And then we can get on with putting some primer onto it. I'm going to satin black it because there's a few other bits on the bottom I'm going to do in satin black. And to be honest, if you take your time and you do the prep, you can get a pretty good finish just by spraying it out in the open air. I'm going to be using Halford's grey primer. It's about £6 or £7 a tin, plenty in there. And I'm going to use Halford's satin black paint to finish it off. And I've done lots of stuff on my street swim with this. I've got some really nice finish. As I say, 80% of the paint job is in the prep, so if you take your time, flat it out properly, then you can do that. So I'm going to hang this up, get some grey primer on it. Once that's fully coated and dried, then I can give it a flat down again, but with a finer grade paper, just to smooth any rough edges off of the primer, and then it's ready for a couple of coats of the satin black. To get a good finish, it's important to keep the can moving, don't hold it in any one place, and just build up lots of light layers, letting it dry for 15-20 minutes in between. So as you can see, if you do it in very light coats and build it up, you can actually get a really nice finish to that. But just to make sure, I'm going to take a little bit of 1200 grade paper. And I'm just going to very lightly go over it. I don't want to put hardly any pressure on it. I just want to go over it to take off any rough bits, any little bits of dust or grit that might have got on it. To be honest, it feels pretty good. So what I can do now is wipe that down, get the satin black onto it. Again, lots of light layers, building it up over time, letting it dry in between. Keep the can moving, try not to get too much paint in one spot. That's where you're going to get runs and big stick spots. So literally just dust it over, let it dry, dust it over, let it dry, and go through the process, and eventually you'll get a nice solid black colour. And then you'll end up with something like this, which I think looks pretty damn good actually. Obviously it's not as shiny as the piece below that, but I quite like the satin look. Now all I've got to do is put the mesh behind those holes. And to do that I'm going to use this, which is expanded aluminium mesh. This has been anodized gold. Now there's lots of different grades of this. This is very thin that way, but the holes themselves, you'll see them marked sort of 2 to 3 millimeters. That's what we've got here. So it's a fine mesh, stops big particles getting through, but it also isn't too easy to see through, that you can see the wiring and the bits and pieces that are behind that. You can get this mesh from hobby shops or modeling shops. I'll leave a link down in the description as to where I got this. The beauty of working with this kind of modeling mesh is that it's very easy to cut with scissors, and it's pretty pliable, so I can kind of bend that to make sure I've got enough coverage, and then I've got a rough idea of where I will need to cut that. As you can see, easy to cut with scissors, and then that's just going to go in there like that. Glue gun has been warming up, and I'm just going to put, this is notoriously mucky, but I'm just going to put a couple of blobs There you go, the holes are covered. I'll just put that on there to hold that in place, and then what I can do is just run some more around the edges. And there you go. There is the finished article. and there you go. So I think that's probably enough for episode 2. 2 really simple jobs. Changing the air filter is an absolute breeze. For the side panels, just takes a little bit longer, 2 or 3 hours of your time, just allowing the paint to dry. Take your time, do it carefully, and I think they're a nice looking side panel without having to spend money and buy something aftermarket. And depending on what you do in terms of the holes you put in it, obviously it's going to be a one-off and it's going to be customized specifically to you. Hopefully the next episode won't be too far away. As I say, I am waiting on parts. Fingers crossed the exhaust will be ready to go for next time. I've got tyres to change. That might involve changing the rear rim, but we'll touch on that later on. The suspension might get a tickle as well. I'm going to look at replacing the seat with something else. Then obviously I've got lights, indicators, mirrors, bars, clocks, headlight, mudguards. There's a lot to get through, so fingers crossed those parts will roll up pretty quickly and I can get on with episode 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. If you'd like to comment on the video with some more ideas, that's great. As I said at the beginning, if you want to tell me how I'm cocking up a bike and you don't like the modifications, save your effort, I don't care. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.